Good day, good people. It's your boy Mr. Ree, and today I want to talk to you about reboots or remakes that could be great. Now, when it comes to reboots or remakes, they have quite a bad reputation for being, well, bad. But I don't think that's always the case, and I don't think they're definitely pointless. I think there's some credit to actually retelling a story, not for us, but for a new generation so they can see it through fresh eyes. So having said that, here are some of my suggestions of reboots or remakes that actually could be great. The first one I have is Demolition Man, starring Arnold Schwarzenegger. This was released in 1987. That was back when Arnold was a king, or one of the kings anyway, of sci-fi movies. Now this film had everything. It had guns, it had hand-to-hand combat, it had social commentary about the state of the world and the way things were going, like lack of resources and stuff like that, and also some classic one-liners. It's basically a film about convicts being sent on a reality show to fight for their life, and if they win, they get their freedom, and if they don't, well, they die. So you have a show, a reality show, where people are doing stupid or dangerous things for people's entertainment. How is that not right now? How is that not perfectly timely for right now? Now, it also featured technology, a very advanced for the time, but used technology to fake images, where they faked people's faces onto other people's faces. Remember, this was set in the 80s, so this was very advanced for its time. But again, it's exactly what's going on right now with the fake face technology and all the stuff we've got right now. So it's really timely and definitely due an update, in my opinion. Now, controversial this might be, because I know he's got some bad press recently, but I would actually bring in The Rock. Yes, The Rock, to play Arnold's position as Ben Richards, the convict on the run. But I'll still also bring back Arnold Schwarzenegger to play the arrogant game show host, Damon Killian. I think he would absolutely kill that role, because Killian was like very charismatic, but also behind the scenes very arrogant and very big-headed. I'm not saying anything about Arnold, but I think he can actually nail that role really well. Likelihood of this being made right now, I'll say it's about 60-40. I mean, it's very timely, the topics in it, so I think it's a good chance it gets made, so let's keep an eye out for that one. I think as long as they keep to the spirit of the original film, it could definitely be a winner in terms of remakes or reboots. I mean, as long as they don't do what they did with Arnold's other sci-fi classic, Total Recall, brought that back, and then nobody went to Mars. I mean, how the hell do you have Total Recall and no one goes to Mars? Who signed off on that?
Without further ado, it's time to start running! On your marks, get set.
Killian, I'll be back.
Only in a rerun. Go!
Another controversial choice for a remake or reboot is The Matrix. Yes, I know we just had The Matrix Revelations 2 years ago. Look, listen, I'm a massive Matrix fan. Massive. I mean, but after that sequel, number 4, bombed, I think it's definitely worth them going back to the drawing board and seeing what didn't work. And I don't think the problem was Keanu. Keanu's never the problem. I think the problem was they tried to tell the same story, but almost in a lighter way. Tried to remix the same story with the same characters and stuff like that, and it just didn't work. It didn't work. And I think the answer was lying right in front of them, and they totally missed it. British actress Jessica Henwick, she played Bugs in the film. She's only a supporting character in this, but in my opinion, she's one of the good standouts from Matrix Resurrections, and that's what they actually should have done to reboot that series. Bugs, Jessica Henwick, should have been the character, the central character, who's trying to get out of the Matrix, gets woken up, and on her quest to get out, she then comes across Neo, who could be an advisor or a Morpheus type character, who I guess trains her and shows her the way to get out. So that could be his cameo role in there, but the focus should definitely not have been on Keanu, because we already told his story. The focus should have been on a new character, and it should have been Bugs. Now, the original Matrix came out in 1999, so I know we just had this 2 years ago, this Resurrections, but I think if we give it another 5 years maybe, to forget about part 4, like it never happened, and then come back at it, as I said, with a new fresh take on this, because the story is still solid. You just have to the world, I guess, is solid. They have to tell it in a more engaging way for a new audience, and don't try to repeat the Keanu magic, because that Keanu magic has come and it's gone. We've seen it in John Wick 4. He knocked it out of the park there, but that's done for that side of it. So a new central character for the Matrix in about 5 to 10 years. Chances of that being made, I think, are about 70-30. I mean, the Matrix is one of Warner Brothers' biggest franchises. I mean, it's massive, so they're not going to let that lie. Definitely not. So they'll give it a bit of time for people to forget, and then they'll come back at it. So hopefully they come back at it right, and we get a reboot or remake that's worth our time.
No, Lieutenant, your men are already dead.
Now, one of my favorite sci-fi movies of the 90s was a classic called Timecop, starring the muscles from Brussels himself, Jean-Claude Van Damme. We all know the splits. We all know about the splits. He was fantastic in that. And that film was meant to be his big Hollywood break, his big crossover into the mainstream to become a big, major action star. And in a way it worked, but in a way it also didn't. It kind of went halfway. So the film itself, while everything was in place, but the film didn't explode like it should have, I think, to become one of those top tier films. So there's space for that film to come back and expand. And now that was released in 1994. So it's been 30 years. I think it's time for Timecop to come back. Don't you? Now, after watching the brilliant stuntman / action star Scott Adkins in John Wick 4, where he played obviously the fat guy, it obviously doesn't look like that in real life. I think this is definitely a vehicle for him that he could use to launch himself into that next level as a star in his own right. I think he's got the charm for it. I think he's got the obviously action, the talent, the moves, everything. So I think he could definitely take Timecop as his own franchise 30 years later and actually knock it out of the park. Because the idea is still solid. It's still solid. A cop investigating people who go back in time to steal and then bring them to justice. I love it. So I think that's definitely one that could do with a reboot. Now, chances of that being made, I'll say are probably 50-50. I mean, the problem with Timecop is after it didn't do what it's supposed to do in terms of box office, it got passed around, and there's been a couple of cheap sequels, Timecop 2, 3, 4 with unknown actors. So I don't know if they've literally ruined the franchise too much in that way. But I think if they come back at it in the right way with the right actor, right team behind it, and a good director, and if the action's on point and the technology's on point, I think they could definitely do a relaunch, reboot, and Timecop with Scott Adkins, mark my words, would be the one. Would be fire, definitely.
Walker, how have you been, Lila? You can do this by yourself. Who are you working for?
I'm not hurting anybody. It's America, man. You know, I just taking an opportunity, that's all.
Got to take you back.
Now, Demolition Man is a Sylvester Stallone classic about the future. In fact, Demolition Man was so tightly woven and so well told, in my opinion, that it didn't actually need a sequel. Didn't need a sequel. It was just made, everything was packaged in there nicely, and tied a bow in it, done. But it was made in 1993, so it's over 30 years old. And again, while Stallone won't be coming back to that franchise in that way, or maybe he'll come as a cameo, I think it's one that's definitely in need of a reboot. It's a story that needs to be seen again on the big screen. Sometimes I can be against reboots and remakes, but for that particular occasion, I would love to see a Demolition Man done right back on the big screen and take my son or my nephews or my godson to see that one, because I think that's definitely one that had everything in it. I mean, what made it different actually from all the other films was that it's a future where mankind hasn't destroyed the whole world and living in poverty and living in destruction. It's actually a society where we cleaned ourselves up. In fact, we got ourselves too clean, where you can get fined from swearing and stuff like that. And people who don't want to live by the rules live underground. So the society itself is actually improved in a way. Maybe it's the path that we're going with what people call wokeness, but it actually went too far down the road where everything was banned, everything was illegal, and you could only do certain things. I mean, crime was down. Police officers didn't even carry guns in Demolition Man. And the society was that clean and good. I mean, the film was released in 1993. As I said, it's 30 years. We've got over 30 years. So getting the right director in to actually give us the right treatment and see another vision of the future like that. I mean, now we want to jump another 30 years, 40 years, 50 years and see what an ultra-conservative society looks like based on where we are now. That could actually be quite interesting to see what they come up with. I mean, and obviously you're going to have the big action, the explosions, great one-liners, and you need a charismatic star. So, who would be the star? I'm thinking Sylvester Stallone's very own best mate from The Expendables, Jason Statham. Yes, the Stath. You know he has to come on this list. Now, Jason Statham, I think, has the attributes. I know he's getting a bit older now, but he's still got the moves, he's got the action, he's got the charm, he's got everything you need, and on that sort of stern face to deliver those one-liners. I think he'll be absolutely fantastic in a remake of Demolition Man. I think that would be absolutely great. But who's going to be his co-star? Now, Demolition Man famously had Sandra Bullock, one of the most beautiful girl next doors we've ever had. She's always charming, she's always sweet. So you can't have somebody who's ultra sexy in that lead. You need somebody who's sweet. So I was thinking Ana de Armas will be too sexy, I think. I think Ana de Armas is quite sexy, so I think she's too sexy. I think somebody like Millie Bobby Brown. I think watching her in Enola Holmes, she's got that sweetness, that charm, and she also obviously can carry a movie. Problem with Millie is that she is 18, 19, maybe 20 by the time the film comes out. So pairing her as a romantic lead to someone like Statham could be problematic. Because obviously the age difference. I'm not sure how that would look in this current situation, but they could easily remove the romance side of it. They could switch. They could spin that. That wasn't really central to the film. I mean, they could spin it in different ways. I mean, but I think Millie Bobby Brown could definitely be a Sandra Bullock type lead in a Demolition Man remake or reboot. And what's the other important part of Demolition Man? The villain. Now, Wesley Snipes as Simon. Woo! That was a head-to-head for the ages. Wesley against Sylvester Stallone. Brilliant. Absolutely loved it. Who could take on that charming villain role? Who could do that? I'm thinking Michael B. Jordan. Now, I know he's an A-lister now and obviously big success with Creed, but I still think he delivers something really special in as Killmonger in the original Black Panther, and I think he could do something like that as well. Right now, he's got the physical attributes for it. I haven't seen him in that many action films, to be honest with you. He's done one or two, but in terms of throwing down with a real martial artist like Statham, it could be interesting. And I think he's got the charm where you might actually root for the bad guy or the good guy. So I think Demolition Man with Jason Statham, Michael B. Jordan, and Millie Bobby Brown, I think could be the one. Now, chances of that one happening, I'll say about 60-40. Because Demolition Man is too good to be left to the history books. So I'm fairly sure someone somewhere is thinking about it. And if you are, heed my words. That's what you need to do. Millie Bobby Brown, Michael B. Jordan, and Statham in the lead. Don't leave it too long.
In a bad time, he was the worst.
I'm gonna love running this place.
We're police officers. We're not trained for this kind of violence.
How was the fiendish Simon Phoenix apprehended back in the 20th?
In the end, it took just one man, John Spartan.
You mean the Demolition Man?
The conditions of your parole are full reinstatement into the SAPD and immediate assignment to the apprehension of Simon Phoenix.
Another controversial pick. Now, the Back to the Future series, don't shoot me. Back to the Future series is much loved. It's a much loved series, more loved by everybody. I mean, it's classic, it's great. One of those series that everybody else feels good about. And obviously it reminds me a bit of Star Wars, where you had the introduction in part 1, then you had the Empire Strikes Back, a little bit darker of part 2, and then obviously part 3 sort of like tied it up quite nicely. So it's one of those series that everybody sort of loves and everybody thinks we shouldn't touch. But again, it's been a while. And it meant something to me as a young person watching that story. And I just don't think it'll have the same impact right now with those actors as it did to me. So why not give it a reboot or a remake? Not for me, not for people of my generation, but for the younger guys. And to be honest with you, if it's good enough, I'll probably will still see it anyway. So what we're gonna do with Back to the Future, I think we need a director with vision. Now the thing with Back to the Future, if you can remember, obviously Reboots Remakes directed that, but they gave us a view of like society right now. They made us aspire to things. We all grew up thinking that in the 2020s we're going to be driving flying cars, flying skateboards, and automated everything. And I mean, things haven't worked out that way. But we had a good 20 or 30 years of dreaming that it could be. We kept thinking, where are the flying cars? 2015. We kept looking for that stuff because it made us dream, it made us aspire. So we need a director with vision to give us something to aspire to for the next 50 years. So we can also, our kids right now can think about what could be in the future, what could they create, what could we be doing in 50 years. It might not come true, like we didn't get to come through the flying cars and stuff like that, but so what? It's still nice to have that vision, that dream of what could be. Honestly, somebody with imagination give us a society, Back to the Future and Back to the Future 2, the remakes, that actually make us think, wow, that would be really cool if we had that in the future. Now the big question is, who could play these iconic roles that are so ingrained in pop culture? I'm going to start with Doc Brown. That's the easier one for me than Marty McFly. I'll start with Doc Brown. So now, for Doc Brown, we could have Bill Murray, Jeff Goldblum, or Jim Carrey. Think about it. Bill Murray, Jeff Goldblum, or Jim Carrey. I think those three are all fantastic choices. I think they'll all dive into the character, and they won't copy what Christopher Lloyd did with Doc Brown from the old days. I think they'll all give it their own spin. That's the important part of it, because they're all very unique individual actors who are of a certain age now, and they will definitely give it that certain spin. I mean, obviously they're all slightly comical, but I guess if you want more comedy, you go with obviously Jim Carrey or Bill Murray. And obviously if you want more weirdness, because Doc Brown was quite weird, you go with Jeff Goldblum. But I think they're all very good choices for Doc Brown. So now the question of Marty McFly. Don't shoot the messenger. But right now, I think the best choice you could have for Marty McFly is Tom Holland. Now Tom Holland is a rare young talent. Now, he can play serious. I've seen him in some films, some acting roles, and the boy can act, believe me. And he can also play comical and quite light, as we regularly see him in the Spider-Man movies. So that boy has literally got the whole range. He can do your heavy moments, and he can do your lighter moments, and that will be really handy when he travels between time and sees different versions of himself. I think he'll be absolutely fantastic for this role. I know we're going to say he's got too much and give other people a chance, etc. But I think for an iconic series like Back to the Future, it would be nice to have an actor that we know can deliver in those roles. So it's a question of matching Tom Holland basically with either Bill Murray, Jim Carrey, or Jeff Goldblum to make that chemistry, make it work. I think the story doesn't even need too much tweaking. I think the technology will, and I think maybe certain aspects of the story can be obviously updated and modernized, but the overall of it is just going to be more of a reboot. I think, I mean, instead of going to the Old West, for example, in part 3, they can go to another time period. So they don't have to be tied down to what time periods they go to, but the essence of it has to be the same. Essence of following those 30-year jumps between 1855, 1955, etc. and 2015. Those 30-year jumps, I think, should be maintained, whichever period they go to. And just give us something to aim for, something to look forward to in the future, something to dream about. I think that's what Back to the Future made us do. It made us dream about what could be in the future, especially people that like technologies. And I think Back to the Future, a reboot or a remake, could definitely do that. And I would love to see that. What do you think?
Are you telling me that you built a time machine out of a DeLorean?
21 gigawatts!
Marty, we're sending you back to the future!